Welcome back to the Untitled Mike Ashmore podcast. This is episode 16. 16! Guys, we made it all the way to 16. Couldn't be prouder, couldn't be happier. And we've got ourselves a big guest for episode 16, Mike Ohlman, former major leaguer on the podcast. He, of course, was with the Somerset Patriots last year. He was with the Toronto Blue Jays a couple years before that. We're going to ask him about all sorts of things. We're going to talk about maybe a little greeting that we had for each other as well when the season started. That kind of lasted the whole year. That's kind of the stuff I miss with this whole pandemic thing going on, is not really getting to be around the guys and kind of, start these new friendships and kind of maintain these old friendships that I've been fortunate enough to create over the past 18 years of doing this. And I'll play the clip of what you'll hear at the very beginning of the intro of the pod right now.
Wow, that's really loud.
Yeah, thanks. Took the restrictor plate off, give the Red Dragon a little more juice. But let's keep that on the down low. It's not exactly street legal. Hey, Mike.
Right.
So what's up?
So that's what that's from when you hear that. I had to actually look it up. Ohlman gave me his phone when he first said it because I didn't get the reference. And now, of course, I do. So without further ado, our chat on the Untitled Mike Ashmore podcast with former Major League catcher, Mike Ohlman. All right, guys, welcome back to the Untitled Mike Ashmore podcast. I am Mike Ashmore, and I don't think there's any other way to introduce my next guest than to say, hey, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Mike Ohlman, former Toronto Blue Jays catcher, former Somerset Patriots catcher, is on the pod. Oli, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Doing okay. Just hanging in there, kind of taking a break from my new part-time real job to be taping some more of these podcasts with you guys. So it's nice to actually be talking some baseball. Yeah. So I guess first off, man, what has kind of the off season been like for you? It's been such a weird time for everybody in baseball right now with what's going on. I guess what have you kind of been doing to stay busy?
Man, I've just been working out. I've actually recently yoga. I had done it before, but now that I have the opportunity and the plenty of time on my hands, it's something I've taken at least 20, 30 minutes every day to devote to. So that's something new that I found. Other than that, just trying to stay safe, stay inside, and spend time with my wife. How do the catcher's knees handle doing yoga? Good. Yeah, I've never had any knee issues. It was always my hips that I had to take care of, but I stayed pretty flexible, so I was fortunate in that regard. Okay, well, that'll help you out with that. So
I kind of do want to dig into the career a little bit, and I guess for me, I was reading an old Baseball America scouting report on you, and it said you kind of gained a lot of notoriety from playing for the Dirtbags. Is that right? So I guess how does a Florida kid end up playing for kind of a North Carolina-based program like that?
Well, we played them in the Georgia Wood Bat tournament, which was like the biggest thing when you were, that age and playing travel ball.
Yeah.
We played against them, and they called me up afterwards and just asked me to come do some tournaments with them. And yeah, the exposure there, they had guys like Will Myers, Brian Goodwin, quite a few guys that went on to have really good college careers and some professional and major league careers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big travel ball program. I've covered them myself for some of the travel ball stuff I do with the New Balance Baseball Future Stars series. I guess, was that kind of right around when the travel ball was starting to really pick up and become a lot more prominent?
Yeah, I think so. Up until like 12 or 13, 14, it was AAU, which I don't even think is really a thing in the baseball world anymore. And then, it was more of the scouting teams, and you'd go play a tournament with a team, that you knew guys were going to go watch. And, it was kind of a more of a professional aspect for young guys. Pitchers would show up for one game and then you'd never see them again.
Yeah.
So it was, it's a little weird. And I think, with social media and all that and people being able to get the word out on all that type of thing, I think that kind of set all that in motion.
Yeah. So you combine what you do there with what you did your senior year at Lakewood Ranch. You had video game numbers, and you hit 550, 23 bags for you, which is impressive. Threw out 64% of base dealers. Obviously, with someone your size, as projectable as you were, that would kind of put you on a lot of draft radar. So what was the level of attention like on you from scouts kind of heading into that 2009 draft?
Yeah, it was a lot, and it all came kind of like a meteoric rise. I went to a Florida, invitation showcase, and I did really well there. And before that, no one had really even heard about me. And it just kind of put my name on the radar. And, I mean, BP before games, sometimes there'd be 20, 30 scouts lined up, behind the backstop to watch. And you have cross-checkers and, regional cross-checkers, area scouts, everyone coming in. And 17, 18 years old, that's a lot. But I feel like I handled it really well at the time.
Yeah. Were you committed to Miami at that time? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so Orioles take you in the 11th round. I guess first off, what is that phone call, that moment like when you find out that you did get drafted?
Well, it was on the second day. I was supposed to go on the first day. I mean, we had my agent come down. We had a verbal deal done, and it didn't end up going through. So, yeah, we had like a little party and no phone call. So the next day, I was actually leaving to go down to Miami to play for the Florida Bombers and start that whole thing. And I was on the drive, and I was getting texts saying, congrats. And then I got the call from the area scout and all that. So I actually found out through some friends that were sitting there on their computers, which I didn't have the luxury of.
Yes. So 11th round, like you said, I think a lot of people projected you to kind of go on that first day. Was that one of those ones where they kind of take you later and hope they can basically throw a lot of money at you to kind of get you out of that college commitment? Or what kind of was your understanding of them taking you there?
Well, I think so, yes. I did play that entire summer. They wanted to watch me, play there and, kind of see where things were. And on the last day with like 30 minutes left, before midnight, and this was when the deadline was, like June 14th or something. And, the next day I was supposed to move into my dorm. Instead, I was flying up to Baltimore to sign some papers.
So eventually they send you to the Coast League. It's kind of fun hearing stories, kind of doing this podcast to guys who kind of go to the leagues in Arizona and the coast and stuff like that, and how different it is than what they expected. Because obviously there's really no fans down there. You're sweating your ass off down there. Is that kind of what your experience was like as well down there? It's kind of a culture shock heading down there.
Yes, yeah. I lived, in Sarasota, so that was huge. Probably a little different experience than most people have. But yeah, when I showed up on that first day and kind of, you have this image of what professional baseball is, and then you really see it, and I was like, what did I do? What did I get myself into?
Yeah. You're the only non-rehabber from that GCL team to actually go on to play in the big leagues. I don't know if you knew that or not, but just what was that initial experience like, just kind of getting that first kind of handful of games in pro ball?
I was excited. So from what I can remember, it didn't matter. I don't even remember it being hot. Mm-hmm. And, no people, it didn't matter. I was just happy to be playing professional baseball at the time, Yeah.
I guess getting drafted by the Orioles in general, too, because you got drafted right after they called up Wieters to the big leagues, basically. I guess I read some stories that, you said you were okay with it and kind of, if you ever left or you went down or got injured, you'd have your opportunity. But I guess, was that always kind of in the back of your mind that, they drafted you as a catcher and kind of were planning on keeping you at catcher, and they had this, 5th overall guy who was kind of essentially blocking your path for a while?
No, I don't think I did. I didn't see it that way at all. I just, day in, day out, just go out and play. I didn't really understand the politics and all that part of it, being that young. You kind of gain that kind of knowledge as you're around for a little bit. But no, I just played. I just controlled what I could.
Yeah. It seems like things are going really well for you in that system. Third year there, Delmarva get to the All-Star game. I guess what is that whole experience like? Your first Pro Bowl All-Star game?
Man, awesome to be recognized for something like that. And with that group that we had there, that was Machado there, and Harper was there, Kyle Parker. Yeah, that was a really good all-star team actually on both sides.
Yeah, I guess at that point, do you kind of feel like you're climbing that ladder in that organization, and you're kind of going to eventually, get that chance at the highest level?
I always thought I was going to play in the big leagues. Yeah, that was never a question. I never really doubted that. But it just, it was the process. You said to take it one day at a time, just kind of wait your turn. And I guess that touches back on, having people in front of you.
Yeah. 2012, I guess a lot of stuff happened that year. Anybody wants to look that up there, they're certainly free to. But I guess how much did that kind of maybe derail those plans maybe the Orioles kind of had for you, and vice versa?
I mean, I could have. There was a lot of variables in that whole situation. But, looking back, I think it was actually a good thing. I think I needed a gut punch and a little bit of a kick in the ass, because it was time to, wake up. This is your career, and some things you can control, some things you can't. You're in a car accident, and then 2 days later you get suspended. You don't know if you're ever going to play baseball again because your body's hurt, and then you got this thrown on top of it. And it was definitely a good time for me to be able to sit back and do some soul searching and learn a lot from that. I definitely grew as a person.
Yeah, so I guess kind of a weird experience maybe that kind of came out of all that is getting to go to winter ball in Australia. I guess first off, just in general, what is that experience like, getting to do that?
I had an incredible experience, personally. I really enjoyed it. The schedule was great. The people were great. The Kennellys, who are a famous Australian baseball family, hosted me there. And, I mean, everyone involved made it extremely easy. But the baseball was good, and we had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Every scouting report I kind of read on you from back in that time is too big to stay a catcher. Maybe he moves to first. I noticed that you played a lot of first base then. Was that planned? Was that trying to get you some experience there? I guess how did it all kind of play out? They ended up kind of splitting a lot of that time down there, I guess, for the first time at first base and catcher.
I think a little bit. They had an Australian catcher who was good. He's the national team catcher at the time. And I think it was probably they just wanted to get me in, get me at bats, and see what would happen at first base. But I've heard that so many times, that I was too big at catcher, too big, whatever. My swing's too long. They're always going to find something wrong with everybody. So I don't look too much into like the scouting reports. If anything, it just fuels me.
Yeah. I guess how much did 2012 kind of fuel you in general as well? You kind of talked about maybe needing that kick in the ass, and then I see what you did in 2013. Did one thing lead to another there?
Well, I think it started right before all that, because it was my first big league camp.
Yes.
And, being 3 years, I was only 20 years old at the time. And I went there for the time that I was there before the car accident, and I did well. So, in a sense, I kind of like puffed my chest out, and I was like, yeah, I'm the man. I can do this. I can hang with these guys, type of thing.
Yeah, so why do you feel like everything kind of came together the way it did? I mean, you won the Carolina League batting title in 2013, hit .313, put together a hell of a year, organizational all-star, all the good things you would want to hear about a guy coming up through the system. So how does that all kind of come together in 1 year for you?
Probably maturity, growth, intelligence, just being wiser as a person, as a player, and adjustments. I can't tell you how many times my routine or, training has changed over the years from year to year. It's always evolving.
Yeah. I guess how big was the jump in 14 to Double A? That's kind of the thing I always hear is that the jump to Double A is the biggest one in the minors. Did you feel that way as well?
I definitely struggled my first year in Double A, but I handled it well. And then, it didn't work out with the Orioles. They, designated me, but then I was traded. And my second year, I made the adjustments, and I had an all-star year with the Cardinals.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the fall league time too with the Orioles. Kind of before we get to the Cardinal stuff, I guess they're not. I've said this before on the pod too. They're not sending guys who they don't believe in, aren't invested in down there. So I guess what is that experience like, and what did at least it feel like that kind of told you about maybe what their plans were for you kind of down the road by sending you down there in the first place?
It was definitely exciting. I mean, they only pick 4, 5, 6 guys out of each organization. So, I mean, it's incredible just to go. Other than that, my first year we won it, and I met my wife. And that first team we had, some of the names that were on that team, when I look back at all that, I just remember like the people I played with and, where they are now. I'd be like, dang, that was a really good team. So just the people that you're able to be around from different organizations and pick stuff up and just create new relationships. I mean, that's one of the most fun leagues if you ever have the opportunity to go.
Yeah, just kind of looking at that roster, your first year, guys like Mookie Betts and a lot of guys who went on to do some really significant things in the big leagues. When you're in that moment and you're on that team, like, are you looking at it that way, or is it just like just a bunch of guys just together? Like, how do you approach that?
No, especially that team. I've never been on a team that got along as well as that particular team did. For knowing each other for 4 weeks, it's pretty incredible. A lot of those guys I still talk to, but no, you don't think of it that way because we're all kind of the same. We're all striving for the same ultimate goal.
Yeah, was next year different? Because I saw you got to be on the Arizona Fall League All-Star team and be in the All-Star game and all that kind of stuff. I guess was that a different experience, kind of having had that first year under your belt?
For sure. I think anytime you have a little bit of experience, it's definitely an upper hand. The All-Star game is incredible. That's just another, notch on the belt, aside from getting sent there in the first place. So to do well out there is, really promising for a lot of those guys.
Yeah, is that another one of those games you kind of look back on? Because I'm just looking at the rosters from that 14 All-Star game. You're playing against Judge. You're playing with Seager and Lindor and all these incredible talents. Is that one of those things you kind of look back at and, take a lot of pride in that you were kind of considered to be in that class of guy?
Yeah, no, for sure. I take pride in everything that I accomplished and everyone that I was around. Good, bad, if they help me, if they were trying to hurt me, help me, it didn't matter. But I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I get along with everybody anyways. So I chatted up behind the plate. I talked to everybody. So I'm sure I was talking to Judge and all those guys.
Yeah. You mentioned it, but getting DFA'd, at least on paper, that's pretty shocking to me coming off of what you did in the Fall League in 14 and kind of the way that, they would have, the regard they would have held you in after sending you to something like that and how you performed. How surprising was that for you to kind of find out that they were essentially moving on?
Yeah, that was a surprising call. But when I first got it, I was like, oh crap. But there was never like a thought where I was, wasn't going to be in a good position. But at that time, I did understand that it was a business and decisions have to be made. I kind of think of it as a pyramid. Once you start getting to the top, it gets skinny. You got to start plucking people out.
Yeah. Like you said, traded to the Cardinals. You have an all-star year there in Double A. Is a call up, is it on your mind at that time? Because I know you ended up going to the fall league again, and a lot of guys kind of, they get called in the office and are hoping for the call to St. Louis. It ends up being a call to the fall league. I guess, is that on your mind at that time, kind of hoping that, maybe I did enough there to finally get that first chance in the big leagues?
I thought that was going to be my year. I did. I thought that was going to be the year that they called me up in September and I broke through and, got that first experience and took it into the next season. But it didn't happen.
So I guess how much did that next year that you had in 2016, because you had really good numbers between AA and kind of your first taste of AAA in the Cardinal system in 16, how much did that kind of set you up for everything that ended up kind of happening for you going forward?
I think it was humongous, and I still didn't get a call up that second year either.
Yeah,
which was my last year on the 40-man. So yeah, that one, there's some questions there, but I don't regret it or anything like that. But I mean, when Yachty went down that first year in 2015 when I was in AA, they called up two AAA catchers on the 40-man, and then they called up their third catcher that was off the 40-man before me. So that one hurt.
Yeah. I guess, you'd been, I think that would be your 8th year of pro ball. And I know you said you always thought you were going to get to the big leagues, but was there ever kind of a point, especially when you're not getting those opportunities that you feel like you deserve, is there a point where you think, shoot, maybe this might not happen for me?
Yeah, when I was out of options. I mean, obviously, I think any rational person would have that thought. But who would have thought that it would have taken 3 years on the 40-man and out of options for me to finally make my debut?
Yeah. So you go to Toronto that next year. You sign a minor league deal with a big league camp invite. I want to ask you about that spring training first, because you played really well, hit 259, 3 bombs, 7 RBI. How big do you think that spring training was in kind of establishing yourself as maybe one of the first options to get an opportunity behind the plate?
That's exactly it, what you just said. And then that was almost everything. And then I went early on in the cold in Buffalo and I think hit 7 home runs in the first month and was doing really well. So when the time came, I was ready, and they knew it.
Yeah. Do you go into that spring training kind of feeling like, this might be my last chance to kind of prove myself and kind of, earn this opportunity?
I don't know if I ever thought that way. If I ever tried to if I ever put that kind of pressure on myself, because I'm a perfectionist as it is. So no one's harder on themselves than I am. So no, I went and played, and it fell into place for me. The work showed.
Yes, and you get the call up May 8th, 2017. I love asking guys about big league first, big league moments. So when you get that call up, that moment, just take me through that, and what is that like when you find out that, hey, for the first time, it's going to be me?
We were in the clubhouse getting ready for a morning road trip to, I want to say, Syracuse. Getting ready to get on the bus in 2 minutes, and the manager calls me in. Just waves his finger at me. I'm like, okay. Because I don't keep up with, injuries and stuff at the big league level. I know, I probably should have more. But that just wasn't, it wasn't anything I really cared about. So I didn't know that Russell Martin had gotten hurt. I'm like, am I getting released? They had just picked up another catcher off of waivers, too. So everyone else was they knew what was happening, but in my stupid, dense head, I had no, I was like, yeah, probably not. Calls me in, tells me, but I have to go wait because they haven't put Martin on the disabled list yet. So my job was to drive up to Toronto and sit in a hotel until they gave me the okay to come down into the clubhouse. So I sat there for a few hours. I have never anticipated or waited for a call more than that one. I was glued to my phone. I wasn't going to miss that. So they call and say, hey, come on down, you're good. Went down, got to meet everybody in the clubhouse. watched that first game. Stroman pitched, so that was a treat to watch. Next day, I made my debut.
I think they told you were going to start the next day, that first day. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, it was planned. Gibby told me.
So that gives you a lot of time to kind of think about that. So what is that night like? Kind of, I guess, really just dreaming about what's ahead for you.
Yeah, I don't think I lost any sleep thinking about it, but knowing was definitely you get that feeling in your stomach where you're about to do something that will never happen again. You never get a second chance at a first try. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. I mean, there's kind of those. I remember the first big league game I covered. There's all like these holy crap, like I'm in the big leagues moments. Was there that kind of moment for you at any point during that first game that really sticks with you?
I didn't feel any anxiety or nerves until I started putting my uniform on. And like looking, then you like stand back and look at it. It was like almost like an out of body experience. Like I wanted to be able to see myself. And then you stand out there, and I have the luxury of kind of be out there before everybody else with the pitcher.
Yeah.
And I had time to sit there and actually sit there and take it in, look around and things like that, because it's just something you don't like to do, you don't usually do, but for something that special, I'm glad I was able to take it in and be present.
Yeah. Did hitting 9 did that take some pressure and some nerves off as well, to kind of maybe get a couple innings under your belt before you kind of had to get that first at bat?
Well, I mean, I expected to hit 9. They had a pretty good lineup that year.
Yeah. Yeah, did that make it easier though to kind of just ease in a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they know who I am. They know so much about each one of us on the scouting reports. I mean, heck, Mike, you're talking about him. You know more about me than I do.
Hey, I'm trying.
I mean, hitting 9 didn't really matter against Carlos Carrasco on that night.
No.
I think we got 2 hits all night.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but I mean, in your big league time, you faced some pretty dirty guys. I mean, Snell, Carrasco, a lot of guys who are pretty filthy, I guess. What is the jump like going from AAA to the big leagues in terms of kind of the stuff you're seeing?
I don't think it's that much different. I think more in AAA, there may be some older guys that just know how to pitch, and they throw a different game than a lot of people. And that's something that it's been learned, over the years, instead of just going out there and trying to, muscle everybody, blow the ball everybody, and strike everybody out. But I don't think the jump was that much, but those guys are good. The way they can manipulate the ball is impressive.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of older guys who know what they're doing, and I guess Bartolo Colon would certainly fall into that category as well. You got your first RBI off of him. Just talk me through that moment, because I got to watch that on YouTube the other day, and I can't even imagine what was going through your mind as that's all unfolding.
Man, yeah, that was incredible. The great thing about Bartolo is, you know what you're going to get. He's like 88% fastballs, but it moves about 2 feet. So you just kind of got to guess where it's going to end up and swing hard. Don't be late. But, yeah, to get that off of him, I think is such a cool story. And then to be in camp with him the next year with Texas and, be able to share that with him and get him to sign a ball for me, it's just cool. People like that, that's this kind of stuff I don't forget. People that are good to people. So.
Yeah, I didn't expect to talk about Bartolo Colon too much on the pod, but I mean, he's one of those kind of guys who's a little bit mysterious off the field. So for a guy who got to have that moment with him, I guess, what is he like in the clubhouse?
He's a quiet leader. He really doesn't say much, but he's there. and I don't, no pun intended, I wasn't like a weight joke or anything. He has a presence about him that is uncanny.
Just kind of just one of those just instant respect, like kind of when you see him in the clubhouse kind of things.
Yeah, and he doesn't even like demand respect. It just kind of happens.
I guess are there other people who kind of come to mind that you've played with who kind of fall into that category in your career?
Charlie Morton, one of the best guys I know. For being as lucrative as some of these guys are, most of them are just normal people, when the day's done.
Yeah, I guess what makes him kind of stand out to you when that kind of category comes up?
Just someone that doesn't have to, do anything for me. We ran into, just for example, each other in Publix in about December, and he's like, hey, we've worked out together for years, and I catch his bullpens and all that, helping him out. And he's like, hey, you going to come in and train with us this year? And I'm like, I don't know, kind of tight on money, that kind of stuff. And I get a call from the trainer 2 days later. He says, hey, Chuck wants to pay, put it on his tab if you want to come in. I'm like, unbelievable, this guy. He didn't want anything from it. He just does something like that.
Yeah, that's cool, and it's kind of like you said, kind of you don't forget people who do that kind of stuff for you. So that's pretty incredible, man. So I guess that's the rest of the time in the Blue Jays system. You get a couple more games in the big leagues at DFA. Called up again in August, all that kind of stuff. I guess how did that kind of set up kind of the following year for you? Because I saw you signed a minor league deal with Texas, which is kind of surprising. I would have thought you would have ended up on a big league deal. Was that kind of surprising for yourself as well with how that all kind of panned out in the offseason and in free agency?
Yeah, a little bit, as of how late it was that I signed. It was getting close to time to report, and I think I had signed with Toronto like the day after the World Series ended. So that wait was a little weird. I'm like, okay, calling my agent, like, what's going on? We got anything? That kind of thing. But it was down between them and the White Sox, and the White Sox weren't going to have me at big league camp. So in that sense, it made that decision pretty easily. And on the last day of camp, I was then traded to Boston. So, yeah, that was quite a ride.
Yeah, I saw the trade to Boston late in spring training. I think it was like the last week of March or something like that. How much did that kind of catch you off guard, or was that something maybe where you saw the numbers game in camp, or how did that all kind of unfold for you?
They were going to either release me or find a deal with another team. So obviously I was some sort of asset still, but not high enough to stay in that organization. So, thank you to the Red Sox for giving me that opportunity. And, went there and had a decent year. They had a pretty good team that year too. The Red Sox did in the big leagues, 2017. Yeah. Or that was 18.
18, yeah. So that year goes how it goes, kind of sets up coming over to lovely Somerset last year, I guess. At what point did indie ball kind of jump onto your radar?
As we were getting close to spring training. I mean, it wasn't out of the realm of possibility at any point. But the first goal was to continue to play affiliated baseball. But if not, I was ready to play baseball in another capacity, another league.
Yeah. How much did you know about independent baseball before you ended up signing with Somerset?
Very little. And the little I did know was just questions that I had, asked some guys before I got up there.
Yeah. How did it end up becoming Somerset? Was there an old teammate? Was something your agent set up? I guess, how did it all kind of play out that you ended up heading to Bridgewater?
Yeah, it was my agent set it up, I guess. And he said, hey, a guy named John is going to be calling you. And, the next day I got a call from John. John talked for about an hour. I talked for about 5 minutes.
That sounds about right.
and And it was a really good. He just wanted to feel me out as a person. And I think they do that to all their guys, and obviously that's a pretty good precedent to set your team on. And you've been around the guys, you get that feel. You know what goes on.
Yeah. For guys who are just getting in indie ball, the expectations can honestly be pretty low. Guys hear kind of crappy stories from stuff that happened a long, long time ago. So when you do get to Somerset, what are kind of the first impressions like compared to maybe what you expected?
Honestly, they kind of blew my expectations away with their organization of everything. I had a place to stay. Everything was there. It was ready for me when I got there. I didn't have to do anything on my own. That's all I can ask for.
Yeah. On the field, what is that season like for you? Because obviously All-Star game, you play really well, hit 260, 10 homers, 58 RBI, play well behind the plate. How would you kind of categorize that year on the field for you?
Man, I thought I had a pretty good year for what it was. I wish I would have hit a little more homers. But it is what it is. I hit a lot of balls hard, and maybe some of them were on the wrong days. But, I left that season feeling good. I wish as a whole, I know we would have liked to have done a little bit better. And, man, we came close there at the end and making the playoffs. But, that's a winning organization, and they'll be back. So, but, again, a lot of guys had a lot of good years. Will Kender had a career year there last year, and hopefully he can follow that up this year.
As kind of a veteran guy who saw what was kind of going on in the second half with things kind of taking that turn for the worse, why do you think kind of things went the way they did in that second half, especially for as good as you guys were in that first half? I guess really my question is what happened?
I think it's when, we lost our three best starters within like a week and a half. And then trying to, pull the rope back. And, I can't imagine how hard it is to continuously find guys. John's on the phone all the freaking time. But that's part of it. And you just see it on other teams too, how many, it's a completely different team than when the season first started. You had teams like Southern Maryland was on a tear going in towards the end of that second half. New Britain, they were fighting to play spoiler too. So it was, I think just the change in personnel can do a lot. And you see that too, especially in the AA, AAA level when guys are on the shuttle back and forth.
Yeah.
So a lot of moving parts, and it changes things, and there's so many variables, You can just bad bounces, things don't go your way, and then you throw, some of these rules that they altered some games too.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really have that one planned to ask about too much, but I guess I should. How much did that kind of weigh on you and maybe weigh on some guys in that second half, guys who are very established veteran guys and kind of had to essentially be a part of somewhat of an experiment of sorts?
It was a little frustrating, but it never was to the point where man, I just can't do this anymore. But yeah, they did just kind of throw it on us, and I'm not sure if that will deter people from, signing there or going somewhere else like the Can-Am or American Association. I don't know. And I guess time will tell. It may not be long until these are actually put into Major League Baseball. So it might not be all that bad of a thing.
I'm curious about it from a catching perspective, too, because I hear a lot about how kind of framing is getting taken away. Did you find yourself still trying to frame pitches while you were back there with the electronic zone? Did you kind of have it programmed in your mind not to do that anymore? I guess how did that kind of all unfold in terms of learning that electronic zone?
Yeah, I just out of habit, you just catch the ball like you've been taught and trained yourself to receive for so long. But ultimately, if it were to get to the automatic umpire, you don't have to. That's not a part of the game anymore. And another part of the game is, you know, the rapport between an umpire and a catcher, and even the human element. So,
Yeah, is it hard to
Yeah.
is it hard to see some of that stuff kind of get taken away?
yeah, it is. And I mean, I think, you know, people had an issue with the replay. The replay takes out the human element also. But people, you know, they spoke up when that first happened, but now you don't hear anybody say anything anymore.
Yeah.
Unless it's one of those silly ones where they slide and like their foot comes up off the bag.
Yeah. Yeah, those are ridiculous. That defeats the purpose of why replay is there, but that's probably
Right.
an entirely separate conversation. I think
I know you didn't. You said you didn't even want to get into this, and here we go.
Yeah, funny how that works on my end, huh? But I think the last question I would have for you about last year would be, I know you were, and this was something you never, you know, publicly put out there or anything, but you were banged up for a lot of last year. You never wanted to make excuses about it. How tough was that to kind of go through that at points last year where, you know, you weren't 100% really able to kind of show what you could do out there for stretches of time?
Yeah, it was hard. It had been a while since, you know, I wasn't, it would have been a while since I wasn't, you know, healthy. I've been healthy for such a long time, and then I never had a hamstring issue, then you throw that in. That was the first one. That only kept me out, you know, 3-4 days. I tried to play through some other stuff for probably too long in the stretches where we were, you know, we were grinding as a team. And I thought, you know, at the time that I could be more of an asset than being on the bench. But the hardest part was, you know, sitting there and watching our guys, you know, play when I want to be out there.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that's like to have to go through from both a mental and a physical standpoint. And I guess that kind of
meaning like I want to, you know, I want to be out there and contribute and help.
Yeah.
So
I guess that kind of leads me to what's coming up for you. Still 29 years old, still a lot of baseball left in the tank, but without question, I think you showed that last year. So I guess what does the future hold for Mike Ohlman?
Well, you know, I've been working out like I'm still going to play. I had a workout in Port St. Lucie with the Mets in May, and then, or no, I'm sorry, I keep saying May, March, and then they, you know, never heard back, but they shut it down. They were supposed to hear something, but you know, I need someone to take that opportunity on me, and if not, right now I'm studying to become a financial advisor. So if anyone's looking for some guidance in the financial world, that's a plug.
Yes. I guess what kind of led you down that path? Was that something you were looking to go to school for, or I guess how did that all kind of come together?
Well, it's something I've always kind of been interested in, and my dad does it. So I want to be more in the baseball world and help those guys, you know, push forward in their own personal interests on a financial side. That's my goal, is to use those contacts and not just be another, you know, Joe Schmo finance guy just throwing them around. I want personal interest is kind of the business model.
Yeah. When you do get to indie ball last year, does life after baseball, do those thoughts kind of start to become more prominent?
More prominent. I was always kind of realistic. You know, even when I was in Boston, I kind of had a sense that the way the game had gone to like the analytics things, I got my opportunity. I didn't do terribly, but I'm like a 4A catcher and a little bit better of a hitter, but they're not going to put a backup catcher in there just to be a hitter. So I'm like right in between.
Did it always? I'm trying to think of how to ask this. Were you always that realistic on what kind of your role was?
As I got older, yeah.
That's just one of those things that
absolutely.
kind of just comes with experience and time and kind of being around just other guys.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Kind of,
Seeing what type of player is what, and understanding what type of player you are. So I can't try and be, another player. I got to be the best Michael Ohlman I can be.
Yeah, a broad question, and another one I didn't really expect to ask, but I guess if you had to go back and change anything, would you?
No. The only thing is that I wish I could go back and and it wouldn't even be playing baseball, just spend time, like, go to, like, the hotel rooms when we're waiting to leave for a day game on a travel day, or, sitting and playing guitar, just little things like that.
Yeah, just kind of take the time to enjoy it more.
Yeah, but I did do that. I don't want you to, like, think I didn't, but those, like, when I look back and I, like, think about, the past 11 years, it's those things. It's not so much playing. It is, like, the big moments, like the debut and your first hit, things like that. But yeah, it's mostly, like, the memories that pop into your head.
I gotcha. Well, hopefully you don't look back and regret doing this podcast, man. This was fun. It was nice catching up with you, man. I don't know what the future holds for you, kind of like we said, but whatever it does, I'm sure you'll kick ass at it, and I can't wait to see what's ahead for you. So thank you again so much for taking the time, Oli, and look forward to staying in touch with you down the road.
Always, man. Thanks, Mike. Good, man.
All right, thanks, Mike. All right, guys, that was a fun one, wasn't it? I'm so glad that you guys got a chance to listen to that and check this one out. Great catching up with Oli, great guy. Just a real fun chat. I'm glad I was able to bring this one to you. We're going to have a couple new ones coming up as well. We're going to have Mike Antonini as episode 17. We're going to have Mike Francoso as episode 18. So it's just a bunch of mics back to back right here. So in the meantime, y'all stay safe, stay inside, wash your damn hands, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks for listening. I'll see you soon.